Welcome to another edition of PaynePoints of Interest. I am Sarah Harbuck, and with me is Mike Payne. And today's Reddit question comes from Fleetwood Timber. And they said, how do you recover from client conflict? I have been in my industry for 8 years and recently opened my own firm. It's been going great, but today I had my first dose of intense conflict with a client. During a heated phone call, I told her that it doesn't seem like we were a good fit for each other, and she then tried to get a full refund for her retainer. But I have fulfilled about 80% of the scope, and she's only paid 75% of the retainer. I told her I would not be refunding her retainer as I have spent 50 hours on her project, and she was pissed off. The embarrassing part, I cried. I let my emotions get the best of me, and I started to cry. I was voicing to her that my business is very important, and the waterworks just fell, and I couldn't stop. I was overwhelmed with emotion, and after things calmed down, she even joked that we should have wine after the project ends and laugh about all of this. But as of now, she's still my client. I'm embarrassed that I cried, and I feel stressed out that I tried and failed to fire her as a client. Have you ever dealt with this before and continued a relationship with a client after a conflict? Bonus points if you've lost your cool like me and shed a tear. Oh boy. This is, I think we've all experienced a client we have wanted to or have fired over the years. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that the advice for hiring fast, firing faster also applies to your clients, not just your employees.
Yeah.
Over my entire career in both business and regular employment, yes, there have been plenty of situations where I wanted to get rid of somebody client-wise and just have not really felt comfortable or been able to. This particular person situation is not uncommon. You know, you recently opened up your own firm. This is the first time I imagine you're really dealing with the major client side part of this. The only thing I think you did wrong was not to stick to your guns and say, no, it's done. I'm not refunding the retainer. Here's the work that has been completed, right? Take it somewhere else and go.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially if contracts were signed and you're covered in that way, like... You know, and when you are that emotionally attached to your business, as it sounds like this individual is, you know, a lot of that will play on your psyche, you know, when you're so entangled and your business is a part of your identity and you're very emotionally invested. You know, it's really hard sometimes to separate out and go, you know what, some people are not your client and you really shouldn't work with them and you're going to probably have issues with them again, perhaps. You know, I've seen some people here commenting, keep everything in email, a record of it. So that way when things are being exchanged, there's always a written record. You know, that's great advice. And I would say that you should always try to communicate via email, as that's, you know, even if you've had a phone conversation, hey, this is what we talked about in our phone conversation, and type it out. Because sometimes those conversations that are not recorded, that you cannot kind of point back to in black and white, I didn't say that. I didn't do that. Did I really? You know, people forget. And I think that would be my biggest takeaway in this particular question is that if you have any further communication with this individual, even if it is on, you know, via phone, immediately get off the phone, type up what the conversation entailed, and email it. This is a summary of our conversation that we had on the phone, you know, and have a record of it. Just because these kinds of things can, you know, snowball out of control. It sounds like it was resolved relatively amicably in the end, but you know, that's not always going to be the case going forward. So, you know, as a wedding photographer, I have on occasion gotten some email exchanges between a potential client and just kind of got the impression that I was not going to be a good photographer for that particular couple, and told them, hey, I actually recommend this person. I think they're better suited to your style and your personality. I think you should hire them. To save myself the mental stress and just, frustration later on down the road, because, the sanity of your mind is much more important sometimes than the dollar signs, I feel.
Yeah. There's a bit more information a little bit further down about how this is, about the details, but I realized in looking at some of this that the details don't really matter. Okay. The point about keeping your emotions, keeping yourself in check, there's nothing wrong with being authentic. Okay, this user has nothing to be embarrassed about having an emotion, about being human, about being authentic, right?
Yeah.
But it does have the downside of giving the other person kind of the upper hand, or at least the appearance of having the upper hand.
Yeah.
When somebody is directly authentic and emotional, somebody else has the opportunity there to feel as if they have the upper hand to control the situation using your emotions. And so it is very important from a business standpoint that if you're going to discuss something as serious as no longer doing business with someone, that you have the ability to keep your emotions in check.
Yeah.
And that really honestly just boils down to rehearsing.
Yeah.
Don't fire somebody on the fly unless you are that positive and that good at controlling your own emotions.
Yeah, which, let's face it, most of us aren't. And obviously, he or she, it sounds like it's she, has been in this business for 8 years and opened their own firm. So, they've been in it for a while. It's not like they're a newbie. But sometimes emotions are just going to get the best of you, no matter what. And, keeping that in check is, like you said, it should be a goal when dealing with people. It's not necessarily the client's always right, but don't lose your crap on them if you can. I do think that her response is genuine and authentic, and it's real. And maybe this particular client was like, "Oh crap! Like, this is a real person, and I've kind of maybe been a jackass to him."
Right.
And so it could have worked in her favor in this particular situation, that losing her emotions and kind of showing her authentic self worked in her favor, but that's not always going to be the case, probably. And I think we've all been in those shoes where you just want to scream at the person, and you're doing so in your head, but you have to kind of play it cool on the outside.
Sometimes the best thing to do is to not say anything at all.
Yeah.
Let that, you gotta let it sit. There are ways to express that this is not what was agreed upon, or that this is not according to the terms of the contract. There are plenty of ways to express that, and most customers, most clients, they already know when they're at that point. Okay, so not that it's necessarily designed in that way, but if your contract puts the onus on the client for the things that would commonly get you into difficulties with extra work and things like that, then you've saved yourself a lot of time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just the way it is. The client does need to bear some kind of responsibility, and that should be in the wording of the contract in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say, if she hasn't already, double check her contracts and make sure that it stipulates some of these things, especially if you have a retainer that's being paid and a certain amount of work is done, there is no refund, things like that, just in case something like this ever happens again. And usually, you're never just going to have this happen to you once. If you do, it's a miracle and you're lucky. You're always going to have somebody unhappy with you at some point, some way, shape, or form. So just make sure you're, covered. Talk to a lawyer. Make sure your contracts are legit. And, I think the takeaway here is just try to keep every communication written out. I think she does answer somebody's question later on, and they address that. And she said, I tried to do it by email, and they wouldn't do it. In that case, like I said, you got to come up with a summary. This is what we discussed. Do you agree? And that way it's written down somewhere. You've got to do your best to make the client happy, but also protect yourself. So, and know when to fire them when you need to. And it's possible they can go forward now, and these two individuals will work well together because they've had this interaction. Sometimes it's just like guys. Sometimes you just got to go out back and fight it out, and then you're cool, right?
Right.
Just do it and be done with it, and then you're all fine afterwards. Well, guys, if you have any questions or comments or anything to add to this discussion, please hit us up on our social media at PaynePoints.com or Facebook and LinkedIn at PaynePoints, Instagram at Payne.points, and Twitter at PointsPayne. We'll see you guys tomorrow.